Okay, so I want to go over chapter 2 notes with you. I'm going to show you where you can get to that. So if we go to the workspace here, and you are going to go to chapter 2, Nature Unbound, chapter 2 notes. Go ahead and click on that. It'll open up this document for you. Remember the big things that we talked about in chapter 2 was adaptation and reproduction leading up to natural selection. So those are the kind of things that we're going to talk about in this video. Remember, adaptation is any kind of structure or behavior that's going to help a particular organism to survive in an environment. There's three examples here. The prickly pear, it has a dense mat that allows it to soak up a lot of water and also store it. It's much like a sponge. The cowgirl lizard runs at speeds up to 25 kilometers per hour, so it's going to help in avoiding predators and also catching prey. And then you have the lichen grasshopper, which uses its camouflage to avoid predators. So that's adaptation, and that'll come back into play here in a little bit when we talk about natural selection. So reproduction, the other big main topic, one of the big main topics from this chapter, is the process by which new organisms are produced from existing ones. Again, we have asexual or sexual reproduction. Asexual, we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but one parent, sexual, two parents. Big difference between asexual and sexual reproduction is the number of parents, then also the genetic diversity. You get genetic diversity in sexual, but no genetic diversity in asexual. Um, within uh, within reproduction, we look at some of the pressures from the environment, such as predation, lack of food, disease, drought, drowning, freezing, struck by lightning, hit by car poison, or just wears out. This is what reproduction is combating with extinction, all those different things within the environment. So we'll talk about asexual reproduction first. Takes place when one parent produces a new organism, and then sexual reproduction takes place when two parents produce a new organism. I'll go ahead and type that in there for you guys. So within asexual reproduction, there's four types that we talked about. Binary fission. This is the one that's most closely to what happens in our body on a daily basis with with mitosis and the reproduction and growth of new cells. So we start with one parent cell, and the cytoplasm will divide into two new daughter cells after the two nucleus have been produced. The big thing is with all asexual reproduction, you're going to have an exact copy, much like a clone that is reproduced from the original parent. Parthenogenesis, the virgin birth, where eggs from a female develop into offspring without being fertilized by a male. Budding, as you see here, starts to grow a very similar offspring to the parent. As it grows off the parent's body, it gets to a certain point, it will break off and then grow into its own species or organism. Then we have vegetative reproduction, where you have fragmentation. Here you have a starfish being cut and it reproduces. So it can be more than just vegetative, but we're looking at one part of an organism cut off, and then it will regrow itself there. Here we have the blueprints being used, or we're talking about the difference between, or how is DNA and genes related. So DNA is really that blueprint, like I talked to you guys about that day when we went over the guided reading. The DNA is the master blueprint or the guide for what's being built. The genes is what exactly will code for it. So I got a couple examples here. I can get rid of this picture. I'm not sure why that picture is there. I'll bring this one over here for you guys. Freckles versus no freckles. That's a trait on a gene that's located in your DNA. We have the mid-digital hair. Do you have hair on your mid-digits? Can you roll your tongue? Do you have a widow's peak? We've talked about the attached earlobe versus the non, the hitchhiker thumb versus the regular one, and then the relative finger length. All these are coded by genes, and those are passed on to you through your parents through sexual reproduction. So when you look here, understand that each type of reproduction does have advantages and disadvantages. Asexual, it's a single parent, so there's no need to go out and try to find a parent. It helps with extinction purposes. In that sense, where you're not going to face extinction very quickly because you're not going to have to find a partner. But it does pass all its genes on to its offspring, meaning that it's genetically identical to the parent. The problem with that is that we rarely get any kind of genetic differences. We can hardly have any mutations, and the DNA doesn't change. So if a disease comes through, it could really wipe that whole species out in one fell swoop. Sexual reproduction, one of the disadvantages, again, it takes two parents to give rise to offspring. The beauty of it, though, is each person passes on half of its genes. So you're really getting a combination, and what you get is a result in greater genetic variation. This genetic homogeneity, remember, when all members of the population have similar genetic blueprints, very much close to the asexual reproduction, and that's when we were talking about the whole change in the habitat or disease could wipe out the entire population. When we talk about environmental and genetic factors cause variation among individuals, remember environmental factors talks about food and competition with food and water, also for sunshine for plants. Mutation is a mistake made during the copying, resulting in a different blueprint than the parent, and recombination is when the homologous chromosomes trade genetic information during the formation of egg and sperm. These are the genetic factors that are going to play into variation. Remember, variation is that differences within the same organism, much like how we talked blonde hair versus brown hair versus blue eyes, different things like that. Okay, why do offspring? How are offspring looked at in the environment and how they can support it? Why do we not have why do we not have a lot of hawks here? This picture right here, roaming the area. Well, resources are rarely abundant. We don't have a whole lot of resources for them to eat. Predators. If they are an animal that is a prey, predators are hungry. They're always hunting them. And then lastly, the environment is very harsh and unforgiving. We have droughts. We have floods. We have all kinds of different things working into making it very hard to continue to have that population grow. When we talk about differential reproduction, we're talking getting into that whole idea of natural selection, where there are some individuals that survive and reproduce at higher rates than other individuals of the same population. When we look at it, it really leads into this natural selection of the process by which populations become adapted to their environment over time. We have the Galapagos Island finches here, where each one of them have different beaks. If you look at them, they're all have different beaks based on what they eat. They've adapted to a certain niche in their area, and that's what they do. They all have different beak sizes and beak shapes to be able to be successful. That's an adaptation within variation that allows them to be successful. The peppered moth that we talked about with the Industrial Revolution, started off with a light-colored tree, but as Industrial Revolution came about, the trees turned dark, leading to the darker moths being more successful to live and pass on their genes. So when we look at that, and we look at it in respect to survival in a particular environment, we're looking at heredity, okay, which is genetic information being passed on from parent to offspring. Individuals in a population have different traits. That's that variation, okay? Natural selection, remember, it's not random, okay? It's the favorable traits that tend to allow them to survive. Remember the survival of the fittest. It does not lead to organisms that are perfectly adapted. only traits that are more favorable, because they are continuing to pass on those traits. Those are the ones that are surviving, and those are the ones that are passing them on. So the adaptation, again, remember, just a specialized structure or behavior that helps um, an organism survive in a particular environment. Again, it's genetically based and can be passed from parent to offspring. So those are the notes. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. I'll be able to answer them over the weekend. Send me a email if you have any questions over the recapture lab or how those graphs should look. Let me know, and I'll get with you. Have a good weekend.